The scarecrows moved. Now, that wouldn't normally catch my attention so much. Out here in the middle of Florida backwoods, people tend to do weird things. And this scarecrow, it's been sitting up on that spike for almost 3 months now, the weather beating it down worse and worse. Some days it's more slumped down than others, but it's not just slumped today. It's pointing. More alarmingly, it's pointing straight at the deer blind I've got out in these trees, just across from the field. My fingers drum against my leg, and I suck on my front teeth, trying to decide on what to do. The thing is, this feels like a bit of a challenge. This could be the start of a fun little game, but I doubt that. It might be a threat. They might not like that I'm out here bagging deer. People around here don't take too kindly to trespassers. I could get shot. I could have dogs turned on me. I could sit up here and wonder about it for the rest of the hunting season, until it drives me mad. Better just go check it out now, and get the whole thing over and done with. Otherwise, I'll never stop wondering why they've pointed it right at my deer blind. Double checking that the safety's on, I sling my rifle over my shoulder and haul myself down the ladder. My boots thump down heavy on the ground, and I adjust the set of the heavy jacket I'm wearing. The deer blind is several feet into the forest. It's just good luck that the branches of trees have grown in such a way that I could see part of the field that the scarecrow is pushed into. Or maybe it's bad luck, all things considered. A cold wind is blowing, and I hunker up a little further in my hunting jacket. Once I'm out of the tree line, the wind feels much heavier. Nothing out here to buffer it, so it just crashes into me head on. It's the kind of wind that normally comes with a storm, but when I look up above me, there's nothing but clear blue endless skies. That feels like a bad omen then, doesn't it? Briefly, I debate about just going back to the deer blind and finishing my hunt, or maybe even going out further and just getting into the car, calling it quits for the day. But then I scowl at myself, refusing to be bullied by someone playing around with a scarecrow of all things. If I went home now without at least checking it out and pushing the arm toward a different direction, I'd never be able to stand it. Midnight Stories. There's an old dirt road between myself and the field, but I've never once seen a car come down it. I've never once seen anyone out in these fields either. Crossing, it's easy. The field's surrounded by an old wooden fence, 3 boards high. I brace a hand on the top board and use it to haul myself up, swinging a leg over, then dropping down onto the other side. The ground is hard-packed and dusty beneath my boots. All right then, let's see just what all the scarecrow's pointing at. I get halfway to the scarecrow, and then I turn around facing the direction it's pointing in. Trees, dirt road, brush. Just like I thought. There's nothing out here but my deer blind. Well, looks like someone on the farm's got a real sense of humor. I figure they must have seen me coming and going, since the blind itself is virtually impossible to see. But still, it pretty much crosses out any doubt that the scarecrow might have been pointing at anything else. I can't imagine that it was playing games with drivers on account there's never been any cars out here. We're in the middle of nowhere. Nothing around for miles but forest and farmlands. And most of that farmland is probably owned by the same handful of people, with big lots to their names. They were clearly pointing this scarecrow at me. Well, 2 can play at that game. I turn back to the scarecrow with every intention of turning it around and having it point at the farmhouse instead. It's not that much further off. 10 minutes tops and I'll be back in the deer blind, finishing off my thermos of coffee, and hopefully bagging a big one. But when I get up close to it, I realize that something about the thing just isn't right. It's not made of cloth, for one. At least the face and limbs aren't. And there are red splotches on the scarecrow's clothing, rusty and dark, like something splattered on it. There's something about it that just doesn't look right. Something that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. Can that actually be skin? Can it be? I think it is. I step closer, and then the smell hits me, strong enough to make me gag. With horror, I realize that it's not a fake scarecrow at all, but a real person strung up there to look like a scarecrow. The person's mouth has been sewn shut and his eyes are gone, but there's no doubt about it. That's a person strung up there. Fear grips me like a vice. I throw myself backwards, tripping over my own feet and hitting the ground hard, butt first. No, 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 no. It's like my mind has gotten stuck on that word, just screaming it at me. Without standing back up, I scramble further away from the Scarecrow, deeper into the hip-height grass. Just in time, too, because someone's humming cuts through the air. It's not close to me, more like it's coming from the house. A second person joins in with the first, whistling softly. My tongue is so dry, it's like I've just swallowed dirt. I'm not usually easy to scare, but there's something about not seeing the other people out here. I swallowed hard and start making my way on my hands and knees through the tall grass. I mean to get back to the deer blind. That's the smart thing to do, to just turn around, pack up my gear, and find someplace else to hunt. But I can't see where I'm going. Before I know it, I'm totally turned around. Fear clings to me. I need to get off this property, but I'm so frazzled and nervous. I can't seem to find my way back to the fence. My knees throb from crawling. The palms of my hands itch and burn. The dried grass whips at my face. Before I know it, the fence is long behind me, and I can see the yard leading up to the old farmhouse from where I'm crouching in the grass. There's an old woman in the front gardens tending to the rose bushes that wrap around the length of the front porch. An old hanging swing creaks in the wind, chains rattling and complaining with each swing forward. The woman is humming. Who was whistling? I crouch even further down in the grass, trying to find the second source of sound. And there. A teenage boy, stacking up freshly chopped wood at the side of the house, whistling as he goes. There's a mass of bruising on the boy's left arm. His long brown hair has been tied back out of his face, knotted where it hangs along the center of his back. Okay, an old lady and a kid. That shouldn't be too hard to get past. But there's gotta be someone else, right? Someone that did the killing, that pointed it at me. I just can't imagine it was either of these two. What would they have done that for, huh? Some sort of prank? I take a deep breath, slowly moving through the tall grass towards what I think must be the end of the property. But the field ends before the property does. Through the blades of tall grass, I'm able to see an old barn on the horizon line. The doors to it are just barely propped open, and the farmer himself pacing up and down the driveway. An old pickup's in the driveway with him. It looks like all the tires have gone flat on him. There's no way I can get down the drive without being spotted. It's long and winding. The road not even visible from where we're at. What am I going to do from here? I have to figure it out, and fast. The whole world has gone crazy around me. These people are clearly responsible for the corpse strung up in the front field. I don't want to end up as the replacement Scarecrow. The farmer mutters angrily to himself, and then pops open the hood of the truck, letting out a gush of smoke. The engine's busted too? There's something strange about that. But I don't waste time sitting around and trying to figure it out. Instead, I take off full force toward the barn, throwing myself through the open door just in time. I've never run so fast in my whole life. As soon as I'm in the barn, I pull the door shut behind me. There, that should keep anyone from spotting me a little while. I just gotta figure out where to go from here. The barn reeks. It smells of dirt and mold, but also something worse. Is that decomposition? I think that must be it. But it's dark, and there are plenty of places for me to hide until dark. Once the sun goes down, I'll make my run for the road. It's not a perfect idea, but it's the best one I've got. I'll run for the road, then I'll call the cops. Seems sensible enough for me. There's unfortunately no hayloft, but I find a dark, shadow-covered corner of the barn to sit down in. My heart is pounding. There's a lump in my throat. But the longer I sit there in the quiet and relative safety of the barn, the more at ease I become. I can't keep track of time from in here. My cell phone's still in the deer blind. I hadn't been planning on being gone for more than 5-10 minutes at the most. Letting my head thump back against the wall, I stare up at the shadowy rafters above me. This is the sort of mess that I've tried to avoid getting into. I'm a good guy. I mind myself. I normally mind my own business. Goes to show that getting nosy doesn't pay off, does it? It's cool in the barn, dark and quiet too. I close my eyes, content in my hiding place. My heart rate evens out. the adrenaline draining from me the longer I sit there, until I'm feeling worn, strung out like an old rag. I only mean to rest them for a moment or two, but I must doze off. The next thing I know, there's a sound jerking me awake, the squealing of metal against metal, and then the sound of something falling to the ground. It rolls against the floor and comes to a rest right in front of me. It's a wrench. I'm frozen, the fear gripping me hard. Please go away. Please don't come over here, I think. Step, step, thump, thump. I'm not sure what's louder, the sound of the farmer's boots on the wooden floor or the pounding of my own racing heart. Every last bit of air is forced from my lungs. I press myself back against the wall of the barn as tightly as I can, but it doesn't matter. My fingers dig hard against my legs. Don't come over here, don't come over here. The moment that the farmer bends down to pick up the drop tool, and I go totally still, I hold my breath. Did he notice me? If he does, is there a way out? My gaze darts around, left, right, and then back in front of me, settling on the farmer himself. He sees me. I can tell because he just freezes up. What am I gonna do now? Fight the man? I don't want to do that. I hunt deer. I don't fight people. The shadows are too thick for me to make out any details of his face. Dusk has fallen around me while I napped, and even though the farmer has a light turned on in his nearby workstation, the dusty yellow glow doesn't reach this far out. There's no time to think. I don't want to fight him, so that means I've got to run instead. I have to find a way out of here. Choking on my own fear, I throw myself forward, slamming my shoulder hard into the man's gut. He grunts and goes down on his back with a heavy thump. I snatch up the wrench in one hand and take off, throwing myself toward the closed doors at the back of the barn. The teenager calls in asking, "You in here, old man? What did I say about getting that hunk of junk out of the driveway before it got—" But his words die off in his throat when he spots me. The latch on the back door is rusted. It won't open. Shit! There's gotta be a way. Right, the wrench. I have to use the base of the wrench to slam it open, and then force the doors to open up into the high weeds behind it. I saw blades come flying at me, thrown by the teenager. The farmer is still on the ground, clutching at his face. What? That's not where I hit him. Bang! The saw blade lodges into the wood of the door, only a few inches away from my hand. I decide it doesn't matter, and I push on into the dark outside. The sun hangs low in the sky, burning golden streaks into the dark purple and blue canvas. A few clouds have drifted into being, but none of them look like they're promising rain. I can hear the boy screaming behind me, and his mother, the farmer's wife, screaming back. Click! Suddenly, the world is flooded with light. I have the brief, irrational thought that this is it. The aliens are coming to get me. Then I realize it's floodlights that have been kicked on. There are floodlights fixed to the side of the farmhouse, both sides of the barn, and even some of the fences. I race around the side of the barn, heading for where the truck is still sitting in the driveway. The teenager's behind me, shouting at the old woman, "Grandma, go and get the gun." I run so fast that it makes my lungs burn and ache. No way to pull in anything but the most shallow of breaths. Each step carries me closer to the end of the driveway, close to freedom. There's the gate. It's a big metal thing. I'm running too fast to stop in time and instead skid into it. My fingers fumble with the chain, holding it shut, but there's a padlock on it. Swearing, I give it one last yank and then reach up to haul myself onto the gate, like I did when I jumped into the field with the Scarecrow, only to slam my hand down hard on barbed wire. It hurts. Pain shoots through my hand. I jerk back and shake it out. That's not gonna work. I just can't climb over this fence. The teenager hoots and hollers behind me, like this is the end of the road. Maybe it is. Maybe it should be. Things might go better if I give in now and just let them kill me. Maybe it'll be a quick death. One shot to the head. But the thought vanishes the moment it's there, and I remind myself that there are plenty of other ways off this farm. I haul myself over the fence into the field closest to me. It's filled up with sunflowers, though they've all dried up by now. Have you ever been in a sunflower field? Have you ever been in one that was past the prime of its youth? Sunflowers have a lovely color to them, a lovely burst of yellow in the summer. But once it gets late in the year like this, the stalks dry up and turn brown, and the heads just sort of freeze how they are, and the petals shriveling and not falling off. The center's spilling out even more sunflower seeds for the world to sow on its own and renew next spring. They're taller than I am standing up, but I drop down onto my hands and knees, crawling in a tight line forward. I can hear the teenager crashing about behind me, swearing and raising up a fuss as he storms through the sunflowers, but they're doing a good enough job of keeping me hidden. I move to the fence line, the one that attaches to the gate and leads to freedom, but there's chicken wire stapled up along it. Holding it steady, I curl my fingers through the little loops of metal and push, but it's impossible to break free. This field won't be my way out. Do I need to make it back to the Scarecrow field? I know that I can get over that fence. They probably know it too, but I've got to try. The teenager's getting close to me now, the sound of him crashing about growing louder. I give the metal one last shove, but when it doesn't pop free, I have to accept defeat, turning and crawling through the sunflowers. Yes, I have a rifle with me, but there's one big difference between shooting a deer for my dinner and shooting a person point blank. If there's any way around me having to use the rifle, I'm gonna pick it. The sun continues to set. By the time I make it to the very edge of the sunflower field, the sky's no longer burning shades of gold and pink, but a pure solid black with silver stars studded through it like a finely crafted leather bike jacket. The moon is out, almost full, which shines even more light down onto the farm. There's something lucky in that. It'd be a lot harder to make it through this without the moon to serve as a light, especially since I'm trying to avoid the spotlights that are put up along the farm. It looks like the farmer is stationed next to the truck. I'm gonna have to get past him to get back to the field. With a deep breath, I try to steady myself. I duck out from under the fencing of the sunflower field and take off running. I skid down on all fours, trying to scramble to the opposite side of the car from the farmer, but it's too late. I'm not fast enough. He grabs me by the ankle and hauls me over to him, crouching down and clamping a hand over my mouth to stop me from screaming. Not that he really needs to. The sight of the farmer's face is enough to have me freezing up. It feels like a horror show, like someone has picked me up and tossed me straight into a TV screen during Halloween's Month of Madness. The farmer looks much the way one would expect a man who spends all his time outside to look. He has short, close-cropped hair, blonde, and big dark brown eyes. His skin is heavily tanned and wrinkled, not just from age, but by the way that all skin becomes when you spend all your time outside. A straw hat has been pulled on to help shield his face from the sun. It's the same sort of hat that the Scarecrow was wearing earlier. Dirty coveralls hide an even filthier shirt. Up close, it's obvious that unlike the woman and the teenager, who are both full of life, the farmer himself isn't doing well. He's skinny enough that his cheekbones jut out against his heavily tanned skin, and that all of the bones and veins in his hands can be seen. His skin, though tanned, appears to be paper thin and easy to tear. It's easy to tell why he looks so bad. The man's mouth is stitched shut, just like the body that was strung up out in the field. He grabs me by the front of the shirt, hauls me to my feet, and shoves me into the car. I throw myself down on the floor, certain that I'm about to be outed, but the man just shakes his head and holds his finger up to his lips in the universal signal for quiet, and then closes the door. Just in time, too, because the teenagers just come by. I can hear them talking. While only bits of their conversations drift into the car, I can tell the teenager is the one behind all this. There's no love for the farmer. As the teenager angrily snaps, "I keep saying you're only good for scaring off the crows, Pa. You've just gone and proven my point today. Couldn't even keep track of one person. This is exactly why Ma thinks you're right for the field." I close my eyes, trying to will the floor of the car to open up and swallow me. Are the lights shining in here? No, I don't think so. As long as I'm very still and very quiet, I think I'll be able to stay hidden. And it works. Eventually the teenager leaves, and it's just the farmer standing in front of the car door. I push myself up onto my elbows a little, using my foot to tap lightly against the inside of the car door. He glances over his shoulder and through the window at me, and then shakes his head, signaling for me to wait a few minutes longer. I listen to him. There's no reason to trust this man, but some part of me knows that the farmer's just as much a victim here as me, or the man dead out in the field. I can tell. It's the look in his eyes. Like a dog that's been beat by its owner one too many times. He doesn't have any reason to help me. Considering the way that the teenager just spoke to the man, I can't imagine that things would go well for the farmer if they found out he got me stowed away. But I'm grateful for it too. I don't know how long I've been cramped on the floor of the car, but when the farmer finally opens up the door and lets me out, it feels like all of my limbs have seized up. I wobble. My legs turn to pins and needles, but the farmer catches me by the shoulder with one hand. His eyes are wide and he keeps glancing around like he's expecting someone to come out after us. With his help, I make it into the nearby field, and all of a sudden, the old man picks up a rock and braces it above him. It's a trap. I'm sure of it. I stumble backwards, certain that this is the end. The farmer grabs me by the shirt and shoves me down onto the ground. I hit it hard, cracking my tailbone against the packed earth. There's a jolt of burning pain, and I cry out, even as I push myself further into the grass. As soon as I get most of me into the grass, he spins around and throws the rock into a neighboring field. The confusion cracks through me like a whip, leaving me discombobulated and reeling. The world has just been tipped on end, the snow globe shaken up. It's only after the old woman fires off a shot into the field where the rock went that I realize what the farmer's done. He points enthusiastically toward the other field and starts making all kinds of moaning and grunting sounds through his stitched-up lips. The old woman listens to him, surging into the nearby field. Over her shoulder, she tells the farmer not to let me near the road. And just like that, she's gone. I stare up at the farmer with big eyes. I want to ask him why he's helping me. Why me, and not the man that turned into a scarecrow? But with those stitches in his lips, there's no way he could answer. He steps into the field with me and starts lumbering toward the road. It's a genius plan. He's like a bodyguard of sorts. The teenager and the old woman watch him, and thus miss the way the grass rustles as I crawl along behind him, making sure never to leave the sight of the farmer's boots. There's dried blood on the leather of the farmer's shoes. There's dried blood on the backs of the coveralls, too. Soon, the smell of decay fills the air, and I realize we've come across the Scarecrow. The farmer comes to a stop, seemingly just now noticing that the arm has been moved. He shakes his head, reaching up and forcing the limb back down to the Scarecrow's side, so that it's no longer pointing. I take a moment to catch my breath, expecting the man to keep going. But he doesn't. The old woman has realized I'm not in a neighboring field and is shouting for him, demanding the farmer come to help her. He goes to leave, but I grab him by one hand. His skin is cold against my own, as if part of him has already gone and died, as if he's just the same as the Scarecrow. But then they're going to be. Crouched there, looking up at both the farmer and the Scarecrow, I can see the similarities between them. Is that dead man the farmer's oldest son? Is it his brother, his nephew? There's no way for me to get an answer to that question either. If I talk, then the old woman might hear me. I gesture toward the road and then tug on the farmer's hand, trying to convince him to come with me to the fence. But he just shakes his head and pulls his hand free of my grip, turning and heading toward where the old woman is calling for him. It doesn't sit right with me, leaving the old man here with these freaks, especially not after he helped me get out of their grasp. But I have to accept the fact that I can't do anything to help him right now. When I get to the deer blind, I'll call the cops and then they can come handle this mess. The farmer had been hoping to warn me, I think, letting me know I was being watched, but I couldn't figure it out in time. For now, I just have to focus on getting out of here, crawling on hands and knees. I keep pushing forward until I make it to the fence line. My hand's still bleeding where the barbed wire dug into it, but it's easy to ignore, especially once the dirt road comes into view. Letting out a breath of relief, I pull myself up into the fence line, swinging one leg over and then the other. Crack! A gunshot whizzes past me, lodging into the dirt road. The old woman spotted me from the next field over. Losing all sense of care, I throw myself over the fence and hit the ground running, surging across the dirt road. It's the dead of night, and there's no one else around. Crack! Another bullet barely misses me. this time lodging into a tree. I throw myself into the thick line of forest, racing through the brush fast as a bolt of lightning, and hauling myself up into the deer blind. There's no telling if these freaks know where my blind is, especially after they pointed that dead man's arm out there. So I only stay long enough to grab my car keys and my cell phone. Then I'm dropping down and running again. Little tree branches whip at my face as I go past, and twice I trip over an upturned root and go down hard on my knees. But I get up each and every time and push forward. I don't stop running until I hit my car, flinging myself into the driver's seat. I slam down the locks on the door and turn the engine, pulling out on the main road with a squeal of tires and burning rubber. I pull out my cell phone, about to make a call to the police, when a hand snatches my wrist from the back seat. Screaming, I slam on the brakes and twist around. There's a woman in the back seat, younger than the farmer, older than the teen. She has the same nose as the teenager, the same eyes, the same cruel twist to her grin. There's no doubt about it. She's his mother, and she's got me.